A group of alien students from the planet Xyloria sat in their seats, their vibrant, multifaceted eyes wide with curiosity. They were attending an intergalactic academy where beings from across the galaxy gathered to learn about various species' cultures, technologies, and combat strategies. Today, their human professor, Dr. Emma Carter, was about to introduce them to Earth's military history. Dr. Carter, a seasoned professor with a penchant for making complex topics accessible, stood at the front of the class. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice carrying a warmth that put the students at ease. "Today we're going to delve into the combat tactics of humans. I promise you it's going to be an eye-opening experience." The Xylorian students, with their smooth, scaled skin and elongated limbs, exchanged intrigued glances. Combat tactics from Earth? They had heard about humans' primitive technology and seemingly chaotic ways. How could such a species survive, let alone thrive? Dr. Carter activated the holographic display, which lit up with images of ancient battlefields, strategic maps, and famous military leaders. "Human history is filled with conflicts and wars," she explained, "but what's fascinating is how humans have adapted and developed unique strategies to overcome their adversaries. Let's start with one of the most famous battles, the Battle of Thermopylae." A 3D representation of the narrow pass at Thermopylae appeared before the class. In 480 BC, a small force of Greek soldiers, including 300 Spartans, held off a much larger Persian army for 3 days. Their strategy relied on the terrain to negate the numerical superiority of their enemy. This is a classic example of using the environment to your advantage. One of the students, Zarnok, raised a delicate webbed hand. "Professor, why didn't they just use superior firepower or advanced technology to defeat their enemies?" Dr. Carter smiled. "At that time, humans didn't have advanced technology. They had to rely on their wits, bravery, and the clever use of what they had. This is a recurring theme in human combat tactics, improvisation, and adaptability." She then moved on to more recent history, displaying footage from World War II. Another significant example is the D-Day landings in 1944. The Allies had to coordinate a massive invasion across the English Channel, dealing with fortified positions along the coast of Normandy. They used deception, intelligence, and sheer determination to succeed. The students watched in awe as Dr. Carter described the ingenuity behind the fake armies, misleading radio transmissions, and the sheer logistical effort required to pull off such an operation. They were beginning to see a pattern. Humans were unpredictable and highly creative in their approach to combat. As the lecture continued, Dr. Carter touched on guerrilla warfare, a concept that seemed to baffle the Xylorians even more. Guerrilla tactics involve small, mobile units using hit-and-run strategies. It's about flexibility, speed, and the element of surprise. Another student, Ryla, leaned forward, her antennae twitching with curiosity. "But, Professor, wouldn't a larger, more organized force simply crush these smaller units?" "Not necessarily," Dr. Carter replied. "Guerrilla fighters use their intimate knowledge of the terrain and the element of surprise to outmaneuver and outlast a larger force. It's a different kind of warfare, one that relies heavily on the human capacity to adapt and think outside the box." By the end of the lecture, the Xylorian students were both puzzled and impressed. They had never considered such fluid and improvisational approaches to combat. Dr. Carter had successfully planted the seeds of curiosity and respect for human ingenuity in their minds. "Next time," Dr. Carter said, wrapping up the session, "we'll dive deeper into specific historical examples and see how these tactics played out in real scenarios." The next class began with the students eagerly awaiting more tales of human ingenuity. Dr. Carter wasted no time and launched into her first example, the Battle of Thermopylae. As I mentioned last time, this battle took place in 480 BC. The Greeks, vastly outnumbered, used the narrow pass to their advantage. A holographic simulation of the battlefield appeared, showing the Greek phalanx formation blocking the narrow pass. The Spartans and their allies held off the Persians for 3 days. Their discipline and the strategic use of the terrain made it possible. Zarnok raised his hand again. "Professor, what happened to the Spartans eventually?" Dr. Carter nodded, appreciating the question. They were ultimately defeated due to a betrayal that revealed a hidden path to the Persians. However, their stand became a symbol of courage and sacrifice, inspiring the rest of Greece to unite against the invaders. She then transitioned to another critical moment in history, the Battle of Stalingrad during World War II. In 1942, the Soviet Union faced the invading German army. The city of Stalingrad became the focal point of a brutal, prolonged battle. The Soviets used the urban environment to their advantage, engaging in close-quarters combat and turning the city's ruins into a defensive stronghold. The holographic display showed the devastated city, with Soviet soldiers hiding in rubble, using snipers and ambush tactics. The students were captivated by the intensity and the strategic depth of urban warfare. Ryla leaned forward, her eyes reflecting the scenes of destruction. "Professor, how did they manage to defend against a seemingly unstoppable force?" Dr. Carter explained, "The Soviets used every resource available. They fortified buildings, set traps, and used their knowledge of the city to conduct guerrilla-style engagements. The harsh winter also played a crucial role, crippling the German supply lines." Next, she introduced the concept of guerrilla warfare through the lens of the Vietnam War. The Viet Cong utilized guerrilla tactics to great effect against a technologically superior adversary. They used the dense jungles, underground tunnels, and hit-and-run attacks to wear down the American forces. A holographic map displayed the intricate network of tunnels and the dense jungle terrain. The students were fascinated by the complexity and the clever use of natural resources. "Imagine," Dr. Carter said, "fighting an enemy you can't see, who strikes and vanishes before you can react." The Viet Cong's ability to blend into their environment and their relentless adaptability were key to their strategy. The class engaged in a lively discussion about the psychological impact of such warfare, the importance of morale, and the human ability to endure and innovate under pressure. The students began to see the profound strategic thinking behind what they initially perceived as chaotic and primitive tactics. Dr. Carter then shared a more unconventional example, the Trojan horse from ancient Greek mythology. While not a real historical event, the story of the Trojan horse illustrates the power of deception in warfare. The Greeks supposedly built a giant wooden horse, hid soldiers inside, and presented it as a gift to the city of Troy. Once inside, the hidden soldiers opened the gates for the Greek army. A holographic representation of the Trojan horse rolled into view, capturing the students' imaginations. Deception, cunning, and psychological warfare are as important as brute force. Humans have a knack for turning the tide of battle with clever tricks. The students' admiration for human tactics grew with each example. They were beginning to understand the depth and versatility of human strategy, appreciating the blend of ingenuity, adaptability, and psychological insight that defined it. As the session ended, Dr. Carter prepared them for the next step. "In our next class, we'll engage in a simulated combat scenario. You'll get to apply some of these tactics firsthand and see how well you can adapt and improvise under pressure." The students buzzed with excitement and anticipation, ready to put their newfound knowledge to the test. The mysteries of human combat tactics were slowly unraveling, revealing a tapestry of brilliance and unpredictability that they were eager to explore further. "Remember," Dr. Carter concluded, "understanding different perspectives and strategies makes you a better leader and thinker. I'll see you next time for our practical application." The students gathered in the simulation chamber, an expansive room equipped with advanced VR technology. Dr. Carter stood at the control panel, preparing the simulation for the day's exercise. "Today," she announced, "you will experience a combat scenario where you must apply the human tactics we've discussed. Remember, flexibility and creativity are key." The Xylorian students donned their VR headsets, immersing themselves in a realistic battlefield simulation. The landscape shifted to resemble the dense jungles of Vietnam, complete with thick foliage, hidden tunnels, and an unpredictable environment. "Your objective," Dr. Carter explained through their headsets, "is to defend your base against a larger, more technologically advanced force. Use the terrain, surprise attacks, and guerrilla tactics to your advantage." The simulation began, and the students quickly found themselves overwhelmed by the complexity of the environment. They moved cautiously, attempting to use their natural Xylorian abilities to navigate the dense jungle. Zarnok, now the designated leader, tried to recall Dr. Carter's lessons. "We need to stay hidden and strike when they least expect it. Let's set up ambush points along the main paths." The group dispersed, setting traps and positioning themselves in concealed locations. The tension was palpable as they waited for the simulated enemy to appear. When the first wave of attackers approached, the students unleashed their traps, catching the enemy off guard. Ryla, positioned in a high tree, used her vantage point to relay enemy movements to her teammates. "They're regrouping near the river. Prepare for another wave from the east." The students coordinated their attacks, utilizing hit-and-run tactics. Despite initial struggles, they began to see the effectiveness of their guerrilla warfare strategy. The enemy was confused and disoriented, unable to predict their movements. As the simulation continued, the students faced a new challenge: a direct assault on their base. Zarnok quickly adapted, recalling the Trojan horse example. "Let's feign a retreat and lure them into a trap. We'll hide a strike team in the underground tunnels." The students executed the plan flawlessly. They staged a chaotic retreat, drawing the enemy into the tunnels where a hidden team ambushed them, turning the tide of battle. After a grueling simulation, the enemy was defeated. The students removed their headsets, exhausted but exhilarated. Dr. Carter approached with a proud smile. "Excellent work, everyone. You adapted and used the environment to your advantage. What did you learn from this experience?" Zarnok spoke first, his voice reflecting newfound confidence. "Human tactics are unpredictable but effective. Flexibility and creativity are crucial, even when faced with superior technology." Ryla added, "We learned to think on our feet and use deception to outsmart the enemy. It's not just about brute force, it's about strategy and cunning." Dr. Carter nodded approvingly. "Exactly. Human combat tactics are a blend of innovation, adaptability, and psychological warfare. By understanding and applying these principles, you've become more versatile strategists." The students buzzed with excitement, discussing how they could integrate these lessons into their own approaches to combat. They had gained a deeper appreciation for human ingenuity and its practical applications. Dr. Carter concluded the session with a final thought. "Remember, the true strength of a strategist lies in their ability to learn from diverse sources and adapt to any situation. You've taken an important step today in broadening your strategic horizons." As the students left the simulation chamber, they felt a profound sense of accomplishment. They had not only survived the exercise but thrived, using the unpredictable and ingenious tactics of humanity. Their respect for human combat strategies had grown, and they were eager to explore more in future lessons. In the following days, the Xylorian students couldn't stop talking about their experiences in the simulation chamber. Their newfound respect for human combat tactics had sparked endless conversations and debates. They had a deeper understanding now, not just of Earth's military history, but of the importance of adaptability and ingenuity in any conflict. Dr. Carter decided to dedicate the next class to reflecting on what they had learned. The students gathered in the classroom, still buzzing with energy from the previous session. "Today," Dr. Carter began, "I want us to reflect on our experiences and discuss how these lessons can be applied to your own strategies and cultures." Zarnok was the first to speak. "Professor, the simulation taught us the value of unpredictability. In our own strategies, we often rely on precision and order. But now, I see how flexibility and creativity can be just as powerful." Ryla nodded in agreement. "The use of the terrain was an eye-opener for me. We've always considered our advanced technology as our greatest asset, but now I understand that using our environment wisely can level the playing field." Dr. Carter smiled. "Excellent points. Human history is full of examples where adaptability and innovation made all the difference. Let's discuss some of these principles in more detail." They spent the next hour dissecting various human tactics they had learned about. From the disciplined phalanx formations of ancient Greece to the guerrilla warfare tactics of the Viet Cong, each strategy was analyzed and discussed in depth. One of the quieter students, Lyra, finally spoke up. What struck me most was the psychological aspect of warfare. The element of surprise, deception, and morale, these are all things we can incorporate into our own tactics. Dr. Carter nodded. Indeed, psychological warfare is a powerful tool. Understanding your enemy's mindset and exploiting their weaknesses can often lead to victory without a single shot being fired. The discussion then turned to how these lessons could be integrated into Xylorian military training. The students brainstormed ways to incorporate unpredictability, environmental awareness, and psychological strategies into their own combat doctrines. As the class drew to a close, Dr. Carter had one final lesson to impart. The key takeaway from our studies is this: never underestimate the value of learning from others. Every culture, every species has unique strengths and perspectives. By embracing this diversity, you become stronger and more versatile. The students absorbed her words, realizing the broader implications of their lessons. It wasn't just about military tactics, it was about understanding and respecting the strengths of different cultures and integrating those strengths into their own lives. Dr. Carter concluded, "You've done exceptionally well in grasping these concepts. Continue to explore, learn, and adapt. The universe is vast, and there's always something new to discover." The students left the classroom with a renewed sense of purpose. They had gained not only knowledge, but a profound respect for the ingenuity and resilience of humanity. As they walked through the corridors of the Intergalactic Academy, they talked excitedly about their future plans, eager to apply what they had learned. Back in her office, Dr. Carter watched them go with a sense of pride. She knew that these lessons would ripple out, influencing not just these students but potentially changing the way their entire species approached conflict and strategy. She felt hopeful for the future, confident that these young minds would carry forward the legacy of learning and adaptation. And so, the Xylorian students embarked on their journey, forever changed by their exposure to human combat tactics. They had learned to think differently, to embrace the unexpected, and to respect the incredible adaptability that defined humanity. Their newfound knowledge would undoubtedly shape their futures, making them better strategists, leaders, and thinkers.